What's going on? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I am here. I'm in the house, and I gotta say today was a shit show. There's no cute way of saying that. But on the flip side of that, if you guys actually heard me on live yesterday, I did say, well, I kind of implied the fact that the trend day that we saw yesterday on the back end of Powell's comments was not going to particularly end up showing its face today more so, right? In which case, yeah, we saw vertical price action yesterday afternoon off of back end of Powell, but I was not anticipating that we were going to see a rather continuation off of that. But a nice little push that we had out of the opening bell, but then that was just a disgusting little intraday uh, drop off that we had off of that morning opening push. And that was pretty much the entire day of the price action. If I want to literally put it nice, because yeah, you had a nice push, a little bit of somewhat of a continuation off of yesterday, off of that opening bell. But then what did the markets do? They slammed us right back down and just basically sent us sideways for the entire rest of the day. And that's basically the entire gist of the day, for especially for those of you that missed the day. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, you didn't really miss much today. All right. By the way, what's going on, Cass? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Well, here's the situation with the lives right now, right? It does seem like we're getting a little bit more attention and some requests for the afternoon hours of market live post market. And maybe because I guess some people actually like the analysis of what actually took place the entire day that I pretty much go through. And then maybe kind of giving you a little bit of a gist of some things to keep an eye on for the next day. Maybe that be the case. So that's why we kind of did a little bit of a mixture. So the schedule's pretty much run down where I'm gonna do live on Monday mornings only, right? In which that kind of sets the tone for the week more so. And then basically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're gonna kind of stick back to the old routine of doing post market live. All right. So Monday is gonna be in the mornings. The rest of the week is basically gonna be the afternoons to give you that quick rundown. All right. So let's see how it pretty much progresses like this. I know it's pretty much getting to everyone's comfort. Hopefully, this is pretty much more better suited for everyone. But yeah, that was the case with that. All right. Now, kind of getting back into the markets here, and actually, an interesting fact right off the bat here. I gotta say, we're approaching just about a month here, roughly, from where this little, I want to say, bear market rally has actually started. Right, and I'm basically talking about the fact that we're from the last time we bottomed out on October 10th, we have now rallied just over 50 points off of SPY. So where we bottomed out at 348, and from the high that we've just recently pushed up to 410, that is a rather disgusting move that we've just made, which is about a 54-point move that we've made from the lows in just under a month. That is rather wild for how quick and how strong of a move that has been in such a short amount of time. So that is actually just an interesting fact I want to throw out there. By the way, Wayne, good afternoon. Tony, good afternoon. What's going on, guys? Everything was actually pretty well. I actually did not trade today after I pretty much made bank yesterday. I take that back. I did trade today. I actually made a little bit of a put scalp on Microsoft and I did trade puts on XLE. I take that back. But other than that, it was not more so one of my normal trading days in which I actually pretty much participated from most of the day. Put it that way, right? I actually made about two trades, and that was pretty much the day. And why did I only make two trades for the day? More so compared to some days where I end up making what 10, 15 trades, scalping most of the time, is because I pretty much had the understanding, and I also kind of emphasized yesterday is that the market likes to trade within a range for a more so an extended period of time. And when you get the trend like you saw yesterday actually occur on the back end of Powell, that only happens within a certain amount of time period. And I did not expect that kind of extension of that trend to pretty much continue from yesterday. And so that's why I was a little bit more conscious about being more patient in terms of today's price action. I gotta say, the only thing that actually was more shocking today, and I don't know if anyone actually heard the comments of Lobo in yesterday in the chat, but that Netflix move was absolutely ridiculous. I want to say that. That was probably the highlight of the day was that Netflix move. Outside of that, I'll be honest with you, I don't think there was any too much that actually caught my attention. Right? You could look at Apple, you looked at Tesla, you looked at Microsoft. I didn't see much of a range from outside of that trend day that we saw, that explosion that we saw yesterday. a lot of different things. I can probably count. I can't even count with my fingers probably the amount of times that we probably saw a lot of tech names and the broader market for that matter go red to green back and forth because that's literally how much chop we had for the day. Now, how do we end up closing out the week? That's pretty much the golden question going into tomorrow. How are we going to close out the week in which the market has actually rallied yesterday? What, 11 odd points, 12 odd points yesterday? And now we had a nice little consolidation type of day today. Where does that leave us going into tomorrow? Well, one would assume that we end up getting a pullback, but you would have assumed that we would have gotten the pullback today once you ended up seeing the market open, right? You would have anticipated that we would have had a little bit more of a significant type of market pullback. That did not occur as of yet. So right now, there you have to imagine that there's a lot of puts that are pretty much piled onto the table right now, and a lot of them are pretty much just getting eaten up in terms of the premiums as the market pretty much just goes sideways. Because we all know how options work. As the market goes sideways, your premiums are going to end up getting chopped up. Now it's going to be the question mark. Okay, is the is today pretty much the day that we just eat the premiums and then we get to drop off tomorrow, in which a lot of those premiums are just pretty much destroyed, and then the market gives us that pullback tomorrow that we all anticipated to occur today. I'm in the camp where I can actually see where we end up making a push towards that 411 mark. That was pretty much the top end of my range for SPY this particular week after what the explosion that we saw yesterday. That 411 area was where I had actually had us topping out. So that is more so the top end of my range I'm looking at for SPY. If we get a gap up, if we get any kind of push overnight here, that 411 mark is what I'm going to be looking at for tomorrow. And then in terms of a retracement, in terms of a pullover, well, a pullback, not a pullover, I'm going to look to see if we can end up regressing below 405.37. That's going to be the level that I'm going to look for. And then we can all start to look towards that big key level of that 400 mark. You do have a little bit of a minor support sitting right around that 403 low. But below 405.37, you'll see a minor support at 403, and then everyone is going to be looking at that mental number of that key 400 mark on SPY if we do get a more intense type of retracement, intense type of market sell-off to end the week as the market gives back a lot of these gains. All right. But otherwise, more so importantly, is the top end of this range that I'm looking at is the 411. As we consolidate, as we may get that nice little push, a nice little gap up overnight potentially, I would look to that 411 mark for the upside here. And who knows, we may not even end up seeing a pullback here, as a lot of those put buyers right now are still relatively pretty much trapped, as they ended up trying to basically short that overall explosion yesterday. All right. Let me actually catch up on some of the comments, bro. Netflix was amazing. The 3:30s for tomorrow, tripled in volume during the day. I gotta say that Netflix move was absolutely insane. If I pretty much glance over to Netflix actually, because I kind of did finish with Spy here, but as I get into that chart and okay, if I drop down towards, I want to say towards the daily, kind of gives you a little bit of a better picture here. What I actually drew out here was a little bit of an ascending channel action. And I think I posted this in the dojo, but it actually has respected the top end to the bottom end of this channel and also respectively towards the median. And that was actually where we took liftoff from November 29th after Thanksgiving. It respected the median of this channel, and that's where we just had an explosion for about a 30-point move thus far. So we are pretty much getting into the top end of the range. What I was actually looking for more so in terms of, I don't want to say necessarily chasing the upside, but if you're looking for continuation beyond today's price action, I was more so in the camp that we were going to need to see price action above 321, confirm above 324.84, and then we could start to target the completion of the gap fill that's going to be towards 333. That's where I'm in the camp, but I need to see this break above that 321, and that's when I was going to consider getting into calls for another call scalp opportunity, basically. But I did not want to get caught in pretty much the chop, the range that we traded today. And more so, if I'm sure a lot of you probably got trapped in terms of just a little bit of sideways action on Netflix if you tried to day trade it. And that's what I basically tried to avoid here today. So I'm going to look to see if we get a retracement. Ideally, I would preferably like to buy the dip. If we can get this back down to about 308, that would be ideal. Is that 308, 308 half is the mark that I was watching for if we can get a nice pullback here. That would be the ideal case scenario if I can get that pullback to 308 half. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, but that's basically the buy the dip type of opportunity for me. Otherwise, if we get the break over 321, I'll look to confirm above 323.84, call it 324, and then I'm going to look to pretty much get calls out for 2 weeks towards that 330, pretty much in that 330 mark where El Lobo has 330 calls, and we'll complete that gap fill at 333. All right, that pretty much is just to sum it up. But you can basically see we're kind of at the tipping point of this ascending channel action where you're basically right at the resistance. It's going to be interesting to see if we consolidate within this range here before we get that explosion over that 321, and then we go for completion gap fill. All right, but that is definitely a beautiful one that actually took place today. Wayne, you actually mentioned Apple. Let's take a peep at Apple. Let's see what's going on with her. So, looking at the daily on Apple, we're kind of closing in towards this downtrend resistance. Today was a nice little bit of a pullback that we had. I would have said that that support was right around that 146 half. So far, we basically pulled back. You could probably say that was about a what a 382 retracement from yesterday's price action in terms of that massive candle we had and that massive impulse yesterday. So a nice snapback, a nice little dip buy as we pretty much regained towards yesterday's high. Now going into tomorrow, well, here's your bottom end of your range. You're watching to see if we retest the low of today, and that was that support test at 146 half. If we break down below 146 half, that's going to trade down to 144 rather quickly, and that'll be giving you pretty much your 50% retracement off of yesterday's top to bottom move from that explosion. Otherwise, in terms of a high, then you're going to look to pretty much take out here over 148.96. You're going to look towards your resistance that's going to put you right into that ballpark mental number of 150. All right. Now, where would I say I'm going to be in the camp of? It's entirely possible that you end up gapping up towards that 150, and then we start to see the regression. But we're going to need to see if we end up staying between 146 to 150, and that likely is your range for tomorrow, or do we see some more of an acceleration to the downside? We break below 146 half, and then we could trade down towards 144. And that's pretty much how I would look about that. Going into that, do I expect us to trade north of 150 tomorrow and break this pretty much this little micro downtrend off of the daily? No, I do not anticipate it. But if for any reason we break north over 150, I'm looking at 152 and a quarter, and that'll pretty much be your upside for your continuation. All right. Let's see if there's anything else that I kind of missed in terms of what you guys mentioned. All right, I think I kind of covered everything. So I did cover Tony, I did cover Netflix, so hopefully that kind of gave you a little bit of a gist in terms of my mindset. I mean, ideally, I'm pretty much hoping I can get it back down to 308. But the fact that Lobo's in 330 calls, I'm not gonna do that to him. I'll let it fly, let it go over 321. I'll be there for the call scalp anyway if it breaks over 321 and I can get that nice little breakout opportunity tomorrow. So we'll see how that plays out. Otherwise, I think just looking at the day from a broader perspective, what stood out from a broader perspective is that we saw pretty much more regression out of the Dow than we particularly saw out of Tech and Spy. And then the other thing was the red to green move that we saw out of XLE. For those of you that pretty much have known that I've been relatively bearish on XLE, that was a beautiful little snap, pretty much green to red move that we saw out of the XLE. I'll look to see if there's any regression on this, but we ended up attempting to push towards the downtrend resistance up towards that 92 half mark. And then we saw this pretty much just get clapped. It broke down and it was pretty much regressing. So I'll look for a continuation on the downside here below 90.56. Below 90.56, this should end up breaking down and that should take us down towards support 89.63. And I'm going to look to see if that accelerates us down towards that 88 mark, 88 flat towards the downside. And that'll be something that I'll keep an eye on in terms of the XLE sector. And we'll see how that ends up either showing relative strength or is that going to be our relative weakness tomorrow. All right. My 3:30 calls in the morning slapped 800% holding runners for tomorrow. My dude said 800%. My goodness. I mean, the fact that it literally moved that much, kind of, I was a little bit shocked. I did not expect that kind of impulse, especially where you saw a lot of other different names kind of more stagnant. But that was just basically showing you relative strength. I know there was a lot of volume that pretty much piled into Netflix. And so I'm happy you made bank on that. Yesterday it was up what about 20 something odd dollars. So I think it's about made about close to about a 40-point move, more so within this week. Just monstrous. That is insanely crazy thus far. But that's basically just a matter of rotation, and that's pretty much one thing that I've actually stressed is you want to keep an eye on rotation in terms of the tech sector, right? I usually say also look for your leaders in terms of your direction of movement, and that's why today actually told me a lot in the sense that it was basically a range bound type of day. Is that I looked at Tesla, I looked at Apple and at Microsoft, and all I saw was the fact that they were basically just teetering, basically flat, and that was whether it was green to red or vice versa. It was a lot of just pretty much chop. And what would you have known is that the one name that actually showed more strength than anything was Netflix. All right. I will say one actual name that kind of stood out to me just a bit here, a little bit of a low key name in terms of the tech sector, is actually this Google chart. Kind of a little bit of a low key. I am going to keep an eye on it. You do have an inverted head and shoulders action that take place on Google here. A beautiful break of that downtrend, obviously, from yesterday's explosion. I was actually looking to see if we would get more of a retracement to see if we retrace down towards that 99 mark today, but we did not get that pullback. So I am going to keep an eye on this one. If we get a pullback towards 98, hopefully that 99, 98 mark, I'm going to look to see if that particularly acts as a type of buy the dip type of opportunity. But a beautiful inverted head and shoulders plus a downtrend break. If the market continues this rally, we see more of a bigger push. This is definitely going to be one of those kind of names where I do want to be a part of. And then we also know, I mean, Google's more so one of the names that trade on more lesser volumes than others within the tech sector. But it just looks like a beautiful textbook setup with inverted head and shoulders and a downtrend break. I will keep an eye on it. Let's see how it pretty much reacts once it gets down to that 98, 99 mark tomorrow. And I'll decide upon whether I want to take a position on that or not. And more than likely, I'll probably do some call spreads on that. All right. But that's one I actually do have pretty low key on the radar going into tomorrow. We'll see how that performs. Pretty much covering also looking at Tesla. I don't think there's too much to go over with Tesla. A nice little beautiful continuation off of yesterday. We are attempting to fill this little wick fill from November 15th to the upside. That was close enough to that 200 mark, 200.82. I would more so favor to see a regression and retrace down towards 191. And let's see if that ends up being a buy the dip opportunity at 191. Or does this come all the way back down towards 186? And that'll be where we look to see if that's going to be the next buy the dip type of opportunity. So 191 half roughly, and then 186 are the downside targets. And then you're looking to break above this wick fill for a more bigger continuation on off of the daily above 200.82, and that'll be another name to pretty much keep an eye on and see how we particularly close the week out going into tomorrow. All right. But other than that, not too much else that's on the radar that I'm pretty much keying in on in terms of specific names. I will say some monster things actually happen upon the newsletter. I will pretty much be crazy not to pretty much mention that. I know that Tom actually had two amazing tickers, ET and also AMT. I believe ET is Energy Transfer. AMT, I'm pretty much drawing a blank on the name of that ticker, but that's American Tower Corporation, two actually strong names that were actually on the newsletter this past week. So that was pretty much a beautiful sight. If those of you that actually pay attention to the newsletter, when you actually feel like it. And then my newsletter play of the week was also Baba. That was a hell of a break that we saw on Baba. I actually had the dip buy opportunity at 76. I actually sold when we were pushing towards 85. I kind of left some profits on the table as we pushed north towards that 89.63 high. But that was a beautiful breakout from 76 up towards close enough to 90. That was a hell of a breakout that we saw on China. And that was actually rather earlier on in the week, even when we saw the markets pretty much sitting in that red territory to kick off the week. So that was a beautiful one. I definitely pretty much, hopefully, you guys pretty much pay attention to the newsletter next week. But those were some beautiful plays just to pretty much highlight the week thus far. Here's the Roku was getting shorted. I haven't even looked at Roku's chart in quite a while. I'm not gonna even lie. That's actually one chart I have not looked at. But I will say you are approaching some pretty key resistance here. I would be pretty much watching Roku. If she can break over 61.32, I would keep an eye on it. Over that 61.32 mark, you should get continuation. But other than that, if you're looking for the ultimate, pullback, I would watch this down towards 56.5 and see if that regresses, which would be about roughly $3 to the downside. So 56.5, or you break north and you look for this to pretty much break north over 61.32. But other than that, I think that kind of wraps up and sums up a pretty sweet week that has been thus far. If you hadn't made money just yet, I don't know exactly what to tell you. I did also mention yesterday not to give back your gains, so hopefully you guys did not get premium chopped up today. But it is what it is. There's always going to be another place, so don't feel like you missed out. If you ended up closing out the week thus far in red, just pretty much stay patient. Don't try to force, especially on a 0 day tomorrow. For those of you that are particularly red, maybe you made bad choices, you forced it in the wrong direction. Don't try to force it on a 0 day tomorrow. I pretty much want to pretty much emphasize that. Do not force yourself into a 0 day tomorrow, thinking you're going to make up losses tomorrow, or you start to pretty much get greedy. Because you have to remember, and I've been emphasizing it since yesterday, the market trades within a range more often than when we get a trend like we experienced yesterday. And more so than not, it's likely the fact that we're going to see a little bit of a trend, a little bit of more of a range bound type of day in terms of whether it be a strong gap up and then regression, or do we see a gap down and regression. It's likely going to be rather choppy. It's my major concern, especially for those of you trying to force a situation tomorrow. All right. A Lobo, will I be on pre-market tomorrow? Unfortunately, no, I will not. I will see if we pretty much, if I decide to do that, moving forward towards next week. We'll see if I do that or not. But as of right now, it's pretty much going to be Monday mornings, and then the rest of the week is going to be afternoons. As usually Fridays, pretty much prior, I have not done it. We'll see exactly if I do it Friday mornings or not. But I'll keep you posted on that if that ends up changing or not. All right. But I will conclude my little soliloquy right there. We'll call it a wrap here for the week. Hopefully, you guys already had a monster week, but I will see you guys tomorrow. You guys all have a safe afternoon, and it is football tonight, so enjoy. Later, guys.